Hey everybody, welcome back to Weekend Horror. This week we'll be covering October 27th through November 2nd, so you know what that means? It's Halloween week. Being Halloween week, we got lots of good stuff for you this week. So thanks for joining us. We're going to get right into it. I'm Alex.
I'm JL.
I'm Eugene.
Alright, so Eugene, it sounds like you had an exciting week this week.
So, for those of you who don't know, Dallas was actually hit with 9 tornadoes this past Sunday. And so I actually live in North Dallas, and we actually had the tornadoes basically go around my place. Basically, luckily, for as far as I know, there were no fatalities, which for 9 tornadoes hitting a major city is incredible, by the way. But there's been a lot of damage. There's about 3,000 students that are displaced and trying to find new schools because I believe it's like 2 elementary schools were basically to the point they're torn down. They're torn up so bad that they have to be rebuilt. And there's still areas without power, several days later. Me and my girlfriend, we drove through some of the areas afterwards, and one of the signs off of s1e5, a major highway, like blew off the highway, like one of those giant like green signs kind of thing.
Damn.
God.
And so it's like days later, major intersections with red lights they're twisted, mangled, trees on the roads, entire strip mall areas like over at Preston and Royal. We ate there like a couple of weeks ago, and now it's just like destroyed kind of thing. You can't even drive to the intersection anymore because it's basically leveled.
That's insane.
Good God.
And Texas being Texas, there's a lot of tornadoes out here all the time, but they never really hit any major cities. And Rowlett recently, I think it was a couple of years ago, just got hit by a mile-wide tornado. And then they,
Yeah, that was a monster one that tore through Rowlett.
Yeah. Rowlett got tore up, and then they just got hit again this week. It just can't catch a break. Normally it's out in the country, but this time it hit a major city.
And it's weird because, I lived in Dallas most of my life, and barely, you'll hit, like I said, these little nowhere places, but then my place got hit in June, and, like the place I live at was okay, but I didn't have power for a week.
That's crazy.
Kinda
and it's
thing.
October.
Yeah.
It's going to be below freezing next week, and we just had a tornado.
A tornado come by. It's been insane. It is. There's still a lot of destruction around. And for anybody who's looking to help out, there are plenty of GoFundMes that you can donate to. Like I said, a lot of places still torn down, still without power. And a lot of times people who work these jobs, who work like at Home Depot, who work at these restaurants and stuff like that, well, they can't work kind of thing. So they have GoFundMe set up so you can help them out. They can help take care of bills, everything like that. On top of that, they still need volunteers to clean up damage. They're doing 12-hour shifts out there all over the area. So if you got some free time and you want to help out, please, by all means, come help take out debris and help some of these people get back to their normal lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, for a lot of our listeners, a lot of them are there's not a lot of familiarity with Tornado Alley because we all three of us live in Tornado Alley, and it's not typical. I've lived here in Texas for over 30 years now, and I have yet to physically be near a tornado. Now I know they hit the state, but that's how we're talking. That's how rare it is. But I'm up here north. I'm north of you. I'm up here out of Allen, and I know Alex, you're further north than I am. You're up there, Denton, right?
No, I'm in Decatur. I'm about 35 miles west of Denton and a little farther north, and so me and you are probably 85 miles apart, east to west, and then Eugene, you're probably right between us, probably 45 miles south of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that whole corner, I've seen a few of them, but I live out in the middle of nowhere.
But yeah, up here in Allen, we got some torrential rain, lots of lightning, and just a lot of wind, a lot of high winds. Didn't see the touchdown like that, but considering the metropolitan area where we heard that first touchdown went down, which is south of us, because there's for those listening in Central Texas or North Texas, our primary north-south mode of transportation is Central 75, and then once you go down South 75, you hit the 635, which is our primary east-west, and which is Lyndon Johnson, was LBJ, and it was just south of LBJ over on the Greenville side, which is on the west side, that it struck in that area, and just I think it was around that area, and then it just I think it was actually like Park, and I know this is no meaning for anybody listening, but it was pretty dense residential area where it struck, where it actually touched down. It was like Park and Abrams or something like that, and then just carved like a 17-mile path.
It was like 14 to 17 miles.
Yeah, through some major residential and commercial areas. I know if you go online, anybody goes online, you can see pictures of that Home Depot that just got obliterated.
Oh, it's gone.
That it is just gone. And I haven't seen that level. I mean, my wife is from Oklahoma, and she's seen some crazy stuff. But we're talking, I don't think Dallas has seen this level of devastation. I can't remember when. I've never seen it in my life. And I'm from California originally, and we had earthquakes.
Right.
So, and I've seen earthquake damage, but I've never seen anything like this, where the structure is just like flattened. It's like you could kind of tell it was a Home Depot. It's only because there are pieces of the Home Depot sign all over the place, and thank God there was nobody in there.
It's incredible.
I mean, it's unbelievable that there were no fatalities, but we have so many people out of power. We have so many people who have there's so many displaced, and in Dallas. You don't expect that. This is an urban center.
You're talking like, I know Moore, Oklahoma. They had a much more devastating situation because it came in the middle of the night, and the area that it hit. I remember driving through there after the Moore, Oklahoma tornado, and you could see a line. Everything's fine, and then there's just a line of just destruction, buildings tore down, houses thrown in the middle of the road, and like. There's pictures online of this Dallas tornado that there's a dad with his arm around his son, and they're standing in this suburban neighborhood, and there is a freaking F3, maybe 200 yards out, and there's nothing you can do in that. It's got to be terrifying. You got your whole family, and it's incredible nobody got hurt. Thank God that nobody was killed in this devastating deal, but also you got to deal with the aftermath. There's a lot of people that are in need right now,
and I mean I'll throw a shout out to all the early warning things. As like stuff started going off on my phone, tornado warning, my Google browser popped up tornado warning, and then sirens started going off and everything like that. And I think the time of day, the fact it was like a Sunday night helped a lot. So a lot of those places were closed, and then with the warnings that people got and people took shelter and everything, we were able to avoid any major injuries, which is incredible.
It was pretty wild.
Just thank God nobody got hurt. All right, well,
so dang, some craziness, some real. And you said that Eugene, you said that basically the twister basically bypassed you completely. Like by how far? How close did it get?
So one of the areas that was hit is probably about 2 blocks from me. It was off of Royal Lane and Preston.
Oh,
over in that area. So I mean, it was like I said, sirens were like going off, and places, driving to work the next day, like you could see the devastation in it, and it was incredible. It was wow.
That's wild. And I know that people have a sense of just how big, kind of to get a sense how big Texas is. I live in Allen. Eugene is effectively, you're in Dallas, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're basically kind of, I don't know if you're in Dallas proper, but you're within Dallas city limits.
Yes, North Dallas.
Yeah. And then Alex, you're further north than I am. And so the storm center, basically the area that got hit is basically kind of like it's within Dallas proper. And then if you're driving on 75, to give our listeners a sense of how big Texas actually is, how big the Metroplex is, because you can fit the state of Connecticut inside the DFW Metroplex. The Metroplex is so big. So from where that tornado hit was in Dallas, And then if you continue north along 75, and it takes you about, I would say, depending on traffic, it takes you about 15 minutes to get to Richardson. It could take you, up to 20, 25 minutes to get to Plano. It can sometimes take you a half an hour to get to where I live. Just like 30 minutes away. And even further north to get to where Alex is. That's just from Allen to Dallas. And the storm center hit in Dallas. They had hail as far north as Richardson, and there was severe lightning strikes, and we're talking through Plano, and rain throughout all this, high winds throughout all this, like 40, 50 mile per hour winds throughout all this. And then in Allen, we had blown over trees. We didn't see any hail, but we had torrential downpour. And they're doing a lot of construction out here, so we had some minor flooding. And we had torrential rain, high winds, and we're over, half an hour away from this storm center, from where this thing hit. And Alex, you got effect too, and you're even further north than I am.
It started
how
here.
Big this freaking storm was.
It started over on this side, and so like where I live, we get a lot of the beginnings of the storms that you guys get hit at full power with. So like we don't get hit with terrible weather out here, but we see it leave this area and head towards you guys. And so it's crazy because I live in the middle of nowhere. It's completely flat. Texas is just the only obstruction is the curve of the earth. And so like we see these storms roll out, and I can see how bad they get by the time they get to you. It's insane.
Once the weather hits that, because I know that somewhere there's a line somewhere, and I'm not a meteorologist, I'm not a climatologist, but I know just from having lived here that there's a point, there's a line of demarcation where Gulf weather, which weather off the Gulf, we actually get an effect of that up as far north as Dallas.
Oh yeah.
And winds coming in or pressure systems coming in off the Gulf, which greatly affect San Antonio, Houston, Austin, Galveston, areas around the Gulf. But we actually get some effect of that. So when those pressure systems come off the Gulf and then strike the stuff coming in from the north, and usually they hit like in Tarrant County, they hit around Fort Worth, they hit in really rural areas where there's not a lot of people, there's more livestock usually, but they usually hit in some, we don't hear about them hitting in these major urban areas.
It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. It especially doesn't happen in Dallas. If you'd expect anything to hit, it would be west of us out in Fort Worth. But I don't remember Fort Worth ever getting hit, and since I've lived here, and this is the first time Dallas has been hit, and the nearest one before that was in Rowlett, and that's like an hour away from me, depending upon how I'm driving. So, it's wild.
God, Rowlett's 100 miles from where I live, just to give you an idea.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
So thank goodness
that's some real life horror right there.
Real life horror.
Real life horror.
Yeah. And luckily everybody escaped this one. It wasn't, there's the tornado and more. The tornadoes, they hit the tornado that devastated Joplin like this. We've seen what tornadoes can do to major metropolitan areas, to urban centers, and it's just devastating. The fact that we got by with the skin of our teeth, fingers crossed doesn't happen again. Knock on wood. We do live in Tornado Alley, so for those who don't live in Texas, who are not familiar with this stretch of area between Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska, this is Tornado Alley. This is what we deal with sometimes. Sometimes the call goes out. We go out and we help wherever we can to try and assist people. So, as Alex and Eugene mentioned, we have people out there who are in desperate need. All you have to do is just go online and Google anything about the Dallas tornado. You find hundreds of GoFundMes. People looking for assistance with either vehicles or food or groceries or anything to try and help them stay afloat while we try to rebuild that area near north of downtown. So anything you do to help or any volunteer service, we appreciate it. Our guys are going out there to help this weekend to try and assist clearing debris, and we'll keep them in our I hate to say thoughts. It sounds so terrible. It's getting such a bad rap, but we're thinking about them and we're pulling for them.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. How about you, Jared? Anything going on in your week?
In a lighter note, I just wanted to recap. I got the opportunity this past week as I was just kind of flipping through, because I'm a big, I'm a giant horror nut and I watch horror movies all the time, and I got the opportunity to see two films that really struck me. I was impressed. I was impressed enough I want to bring them up and I want to recommend them, because I normally don't see stuff that just show, it's like, oh wow, I got to recommend this stuff. So the first one I got to see, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah.
And
how was it?
Yeah.
And based off that series of children's books that we grew up with. Now I grew up with these books. I don't think you got a chance to, because they were actually in my school when I was in elementary school, and I don't remember if you ever got to read them, Alex, when you were a kid. But these books were scary as fuck. Okay, the artwork in them, the stories they told, they were scary as shit. And imagine, back when I was growing up, I was 5, 6, and 7 years old, and I'm reading this stuff, and there were 3 books in that series, and they were all flippin' terrifying, and the artwork was creepy as shit. Well, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the movie was made, and it came out just a little bit ago, and I have to admit, I was really impressed. This is a creepy little film. Number one, not for kids. Okay? It's not violent. It's not gory. Okay? But this is just, elements of really, really creepy stuff. And it really plays on what you don't see is what's scary. And definitely, plays off that manner. And, this is not for young kids, not for really young kids. So I would say definitely 10, 11, 12 maybe would really, really enjoy this. Kids who would enjoy the books and not be totally terrified by them, but a really, really slick little film. Great homage to the books, because the books are so popular. I found out that the screenplay that they were running off of was written by 3 kids. Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton, and those are the guys who wrote. They each directed some of the Saw films, and they also did the Collector series. So they wrote and directed the Collector and the Collection. So graphic horror in that respect, but they helped to write this along with Guillermo del Toro. So you had Marcus Dunstan, Patrick Melton, and Guillermo del Toro did the screenplay off of this, and then basically the screenplay, and then it was directed by Andre Overdahl, who is a Norwegian director, and he directed The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see yet. It's on Netflix.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
That's a good one.
It is fucking amazing. That movie was so goddamn creepy and so well written and well acted. It is Emil Hirsch and Brian Cox.
Yeah.
And that is an amazing little film. Strongly recommend. But the director of that also directed Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So just A-list talent. And it was great because all of the actors, aside from Dean Norris from Breaking Bad fame, Dean Norris was in it, but his part was rather small. But all the kids together, it felt very much in the vein of what we're getting with Stranger Things. So where kind of like the kids, we have the Goonies and stuff like this, kind of this nostalgia feedback, but it was great because the talented kids. I have never seen any of them in anything before, but really, really smart, really well written. Strongly recommend, especially if you have younger ones that like to watch scary movies. But it's a big recommendation. The other one I watched was a Halloween film called Trick, which, pardon me, which honestly was a slasher film that I kid you not this movie was way better than it had any right to be. Really, really smart flick. It's on VOD right now. I believe it's on Microsoft Store. If you have Xbox, you can get it on Xbox Live. I don't know if it's on Amazon Prime, but it's definitely VOD. You can get it on demand. And it stars Omar Epps. Omar Epps from Dracula 2000, from the show House. And your Juice, stuff like that. He's been doing stuff with Omar Epps, Tom Atkins, and for those real horror fanatics, Tom Atkins from Creepshow fame, from Night of the Creeps. So a horror legend right there. So Tom Atkins and fucking Jamie Kennedy was in this thing.
Circle, circle, dot, dot.
Okay, and Jamie Kennedy was in this, and he you totally that went my Amtrak. So. But Jamie Kennedy was in the thing, and he wasn't fucking annoying.
I don't believe you.
And I was shocked. It actually was quite good because I'm sorry to say it was a smaller role, so he was kind of anecdotal to the story. And I was like, why did Jamie Kennedy? Why the fuck is he? It was like, okay, he's just Okay, he's just playing a straight character. Okay, we get a teaspoon of Jamie Kennedy and a whole shit ton of Omar Epps. And I was like, okay, I'll accept that formula any day because I love Omar Epps. I think he's a fantastic actor, and I've never seen him do other than Dracula 2000, which I don't really consider that like a horror film. Because this was a legit horror film. There was no tongue in cheek in this one. This was a legit slasher, and nice little twist in the end. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody because I want you to watch it.
You better not.
This movie definitely deserves some cred because I started going as like, oh, well, this looks interesting. I'm bored. I'm going to watch a Halloween. I haven't watched a Halloween horror film. I watch Trick or Treat every year, so just because I love that film, I can't wait for the second one to come out. But I wanted to watch another one, and I'd already seen Tales of Halloween, which is that collection of short stories and short films, and I wanted to watch this, and it was like because the mask, the killer looked really really cool, and wow, talk about being impressed. Sharp writing, excellent. The acting was not overwrought. Grounded horror film, really impressive.
I'm going to check that out.
Strongly recommended. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and just a good slasher. I haven't seen a really solid slasher since I know that Halloween just came out. The Danny McBride Blumhouse Halloween just came out, and it was fantastic. But that's a legendary franchise. This is a new one. I don't think it sets up anything big, and if they ever tried it would be a mistake for them to try and build off of this movie. But it was just good. It was like, this is a good movie. This is just a good slasher for Halloween. So recommend that. The Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, available on VOD, available on Microsoft Live, Xbox Live, and Trick, available on VOD as well. So recommend those two.
Awesome.
Ooh, all right, cool.
Well, I didn't do a whole lot of movie watching. I would have loved to, but with this week coming up, being Halloween and everything, I'll definitely get into some. I've got some on my watch list that I want to see on Netflix that I haven't watched before, so I'm excited for that. This week I spent a lot of time outside of the house, which is nice. Went and saw an air show on Sunday at the Alliance Airport. The Blue Angels were there. It was my mom's birthday. So that was super sweet. Got to see some super cool jets. That was really exciting.
That's really cool.
I know.
I'm sorry. I hate to jump into your deal. When I was growing up in California, my dad used to take me out to the area around Del Mar, and we used to watch the Blue Angels train in San Diego.
Nice.
So yeah, it was really really cool. So I got as a kid, it's just me and my dad just chilling out of the truck, just watching the Blue Angels when they were doing their practice flights.
We used to drive from Minneapolis to Chicago when I lived up there, and on our way back we'd stop in Wisconsin. There was a spot that the Blue Angels practiced a lot, and so we'd stop there all the time. And, like, my mom was so into it. She was so excited. It was super awesome to see. She was so happy. My girlfriend's never seen an air show before, so watching her face when, they come in diamond formation 16 or 18 inches off of each other's wings.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was so cool to watch that. My daughter was there. My nephew was there. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. And getting to do that, and just my mom was so excited.
Yeah,
that was the best part. It was her birthday.
There's actually a video out that they did.
So happy.
There's a video out there where they set up a 360 camera in the cockpit of the Blue Angels, the F-18, and then they had them fly in formation and stuff like that, so you can watch from like the pilot's point of view, and you really appreciate how close they are when you're flying, and it looks like probably like 20 or 30 feet, you got another F-18 right there, and y'all are going 700 to 800 miles an hour.
No, dude.
Oh, it's like the flipping the bird scene. It's like the
Are you talking about Top Gun?
It's like in Top Gun. It's like the flipping bird scene in Top Gun.
Exactly.
I was inverted.
Because I was
inverted. I was keeping up with foreign relations. I was giving him the bird. The finger. Yes, I know the finger. Sorry, it does that sometimes.
Oh, what a great film. Yeah, so it was super cool. We did that on Sunday. Saturday, we went to the zoo. That was cool. And then Monday, we actually got pre-approved to build a house out in Sanger. So it's definitely a possibility coming up here in the next month or so.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Very cool. Congrats. Awesome.
That'll be fun. All right, we got lots of stuff to get into today.
Let's jump into it.
Yes. What do we got?
All right. So, we're going to kick this thing off with the work of a horror legend. And it was on this day, October 27th, 1989, that the slasher black comedy film Shocker was released. October 27th, 1989. Now, there's a lot of people probably not familiar with this film, but it was directed by Wes Craven.
Yes, it was.
So directed by Wes Craven, and had Michael Murphy in it, Peter Berg, Cammie Cooper, but also starring as the villain, Horace Pinker, serial killer Horace Pinker, was Mitch Pileggi, who would only a few years later, because this came out in '89, but a few years later, would be Walter Skinner in the X-Files. So, and Shocker kind of plays plays a little bit like kind of like an X-Files episode, but basically there's this serial killer who's running around, and the detective is chasing him, and they capture him after some crazy shit happens. They capture him, they try him, they put him to death, and he gets killed, but he's made a deal with the devil. And after he's killed, he gets transformed into pure electricity. And he's able to jump through electrical devices and possess people and continue murdering people as he's possessing people. And that's pretty much the plot summary of that, is this unkillable killer jumping around where you can't get to him and just murdering people for the fun of it. And really, really crazy film. But fun nonetheless.
It was fun.
I mean, you can't. Mitch Pileggi, I swear, the dude is a fantastic villain.
He was great in that movie, and then to watch him flip from this role, and only a couple years later ended up in what everybody knows him for, being in X-Files. But not even that, I don't know if you know anything about this guy outside of those two movies, and not a lot of people actually do, but he was in so many he was even recently in Supernatural. Wow, I can't believe I forgot that.
That's right.
He played 8 episodes.
Yeah, he is.
That's right.
Yeah, and so he was Samuel, and I think that was, I can't even remember what season it was, but it was back a few years. But yeah, it was a huge role for him. Just going from Shocker, and I don't even think that was his first major film, but going from something like that all the way to Supernatural, something that we're in. He was in Basic Instinct. A lot of stuff. I know he was in at least an episode of American Horror Story. He just keeps popping up in all these things that
I know he popped up in Sons of Anarchy.
Definitely, Sons of Anarchy.
And I think he was in Stargate Atlantis.
For
a bit.
Probably.
Yeah. He kind of bounced around a little bit. Yeah.
He was in Castle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's one of those guys where you see them all the time, but a lot of times you don't exactly know his name. There's just careers of people who have that. They're always kind of like that. That B-list and that C-list actors, but they make a great career out of it.
Oh,
He's never stopped working.
Like Glenn Morshower is one of the classic guys. You've seen him in everything, but you wouldn't know his name if you ever saw him. But Glenn Morshower is actually a friend of mine. Well, I wouldn't say he's a friend. He's an acquaintance of mine. I don't. If Glenn ever listens to this, I don't want to say, "Oh, I'm friends with Glenn Morshower." But yeah, definitely, he's a character actor who's been in everything, and I think Mitch Pileggi. But he's got that. What do we call that? I guess he's got just that look. You know what I'm talking about. He's just the bald head, he's stern kind of guy. He's in great shape, and just absolutely his affect is just brilliant. I think for what he does. He's just
a hands down great actor, and his life is on the screen. And I know he met his wife on the set of X-Files. So they got that cute little story there, and he's from Austin. He's an eccentric guy. He can play any role. By far, one of the best TV actors out there. This being one of, I think, his only films, besides Mega Cyclone and little B-list films that you'll see.
Yeah, stuff like that.
But yeah, he played this role great, and then he just lived a great career. Definitely somebody that I would look up to. I'd definitely say I'd look up to him in the film industry.
Definitely playing a lot of blue collars, a lot of cops, a lot of military personnel.
Yeah, well, being from Texas,
has that good look. Now, but in watching him and the effects that they did in Shocker and what they did for Horace Pinker, because they really played up, because he's actually a big dude.
He's huge.
He's actually a really big guy, and he's also a boxer. So, and he's a big fitness fanatic. So he's in good shape. But what Wes Craven was able to accomplish as far as effects go with him was really, really, really impressive. Yeah, as far as Shocker goes.
It actually, I was looking into some of the behind the scenes stuff of it, because with Wes Craven, and you think about the Nightmare series and how innovative that is, and how even with the limited technology back in 1989, how he was able to make it work, and he played with perspectives. So there's a scene where he's jumping in and out of a TV, and so what they ended up doing was they built a TV set and then took the screen out so that it's hollow. It's just basically a TV frame. You got to remember, this is a 1980s TV. You think the wood frame, big, TVs they had back then.
The size of a car.
Yeah,
those big rear projections. Yeah,
you can't think of your flat screen today or something. So they would build these and then basically have a slide inside of them, so he would jump onto a slide, basically going through the TV. Kind of thing, and then they would use CG and CG a screen over it to get that effect of him jumping through a TV, coming in and out and stuff like that. So
that's right, because he had the kind of the staticky color effect, of a TV coming into focus when he was coming out of the television.
Yes.
Well, it's really slick, because Craven has been now. I mean, because this was only a few years after Nightmare, and Craven I always considered him, a master of doing the most with the least. Because I remember there was a story that I heard about Nightmare, about how Craven would get approached, because there's a lot of effects obviously in Nightmare on Elm Street, and the most complicated, he's always said, was the Johnny Depp death scene when the blood is coming out of the bed. And in order to do that shot, they had to recreate. They basically had to build the bedroom upside down, and they basically built the Johnny Depp's entire bed. They recreated it upside down and had the bed on the ceiling, and then had a tank up underneath it, or up above the bed, and they basically just dumped the blood down through the bed. So, and then they just turned it upside down, and then they played with the motion of it, or played with the speed of it, so you get a weird effect. But that's basically how you imagine all the effort that went into building that. But the one scene that he got asked the most about was the scene when Heather Langenkamp, when Nancy's character is going to sleep, and the wall behind her, you can see Freddy push through the wall. Like she's entering the dream state. And people would see that, and the people saw that, and they're freaked out. It's holy shit. How the fuck? And in actuality, it's just a latex wall. It literally is latex, the color of the wall. And they basically painted the wall of the bedroom that same color, and that was just the set. And then all of a sudden they had this big set, and it's just a sheet of latex. And Wes Craven and then Robert Englund just pushes his face and his hands into the wall for a brief moment, and then comes back out. It's and then people were just freaked out, how did he do that? Oh my God! And Wes Craven's really? It was a sheet of latex. It's just a sheet of latex. You don't ask me about the bedroom scene, which took days to almost a week to freaking make work, and we weren't even sure if it was going to. But yeah, he was just a master of doing the most with the least, and I think was one of his hallmarks. Being able to be an effective horror director was how can we make this work? He was the Apollo 13 engineer coming up with the friggin' air filter. At the last moment to make that shit work.
And because I've always felt he never needed the big budget. He was able to get the story told the way he wanted to without those extra millions of dollars and the moments that he had. I mean, even in the first nightmare where you see Freddy's claw come up from the bathtub, just
God, that was so brilliant.
It is just little stuff like that, but it's brilliant.
That was a brilliant scene.
Yes.
But absolutely cool. One thing that was interesting is that because Wes Craven directed Nightmare on Elm Street for New Line, and it was his entry into the slasher genre. And so far, you've got New Line Cinema has got Nightmare on Elm Street. Then Carpenter brought out Halloween, and you got Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and so all these studios are cashing in on the horror genre, and so Universal Studios wanted to cash in on this as well because it's just making big money everywhere. And so they hired Wes Craven to do this, and they in essence wanted to make basically they wanted their own Nightmare. And so that's why there's a lot of similarities, unfortunately, between Shocker and Nightmare on Elm Street. Is that you have the ethereal killer moving from place to place. You can't stop him. You don't know where he's going to pop up. Anybody could be a victim at any time. And then he's virtually unkillable, but we got to pull him into reality in order to kill him and shit. You can see where he was a serial killer instead of a child killer, and then he was executed, or he was vigilante justice. And then, Freddy died in fire. This guy was electrocuted. And you see the similarities as they start piling up. And then, so in essence, what a lot of people said, especially, Wes Craven's AD and the people that are around him basically said that this was Wes Craven's answer to, this was his answer to Universal this was his answer to Nightmare on Elm Street for somebody else. And it was a simple deal, and he just sold it to Universal. Universal was like, yay, we got something great. And arguably, the last 20 minutes of Shocker were amazing, as far as because they did the television jump where Pinker is jumping from show to show as the channels are switching because they trap him in the television.
Mm-hmm.
And so the killer shows up on the news report, or he shows up on the weather report or some shit like that, and he's running through different shows. They actually did this shit, and arguably this is one of the best 20 minutes of any the final 20 minutes of any horror film, but. This whole film was, in essence, like a fuck you to Universal. This was Wes Craven's FU to that, as in, it was derivative. And people saw that it was derivative. And so people saw that it was Wes Craven just mimicking himself. It's like, wow, instead of just running with what you know, you just churn this out. And Wes Craven knew that. And he took the money. Because with that money, he could turn around and put it into the stuff that he wanted to do. But, as is Wes Craven, the consummate professional, we at least got a decent, quirky little slasher film that, in essence, gave us Mitch Pileggi.
Yeah, and he used that to create New Nightmare and then Scream after that. So, we got some good stuff. Good stuff.
Cool. All right. Well, moving on. October 28th, 2005. And I was just thinking about this, that wasn't too long ago. I guess that was about 14 years ago now.
Wow. It was a minute. It was a minute ago, yes.
God, it was almost half my life. No, it wasn't half my life ago. Anyways, this show came out, and I might be wrong. I think it was on Showtime, called Masters of Horror. And this...
Oh,
yeah.
I freaking love this series.
This series ran for, as far as I could find, 2 seasons. And it was just a collaboration of so many just master writers, master storytellers. Clive Barker is one of the big names on it. I know Mick Garris did 24 episodes. He was kind of on a lot of the writings. But you've got this span of writers that it just came together and pumped out the most psychological... just dirty filmmaking I've ever seen. It was so... I went and watched some of these episodes because I remember it being on TV, but I hadn't watched a whole lot of it. So then I went back and watched some of these, and I felt uncomfortable sitting in my own room. And this is from 14... It was just so creepy. These guys were great. And they came together and hey, here you go. Here's a pen and paper and make it fucking weird. and they sure did. like I said, I know Clive Barker did like a couple of the episodes, and I was looking for those specifically because I love his work. But you've got H.P. Lovecraft. It does. There's a story from him in there. Just all these big names and names you've never heard of, and stuff that makes me want to go look into these people's like filmographies, because it's just some of this stuff. Like I said, there was an episode on there called Cigarette Burns, and it just, I'm not even, go watch that one. Do that, because it was just like, I seriously, I felt uncomfortable. I was up against the wall knowing there was nothing behind me, but I just felt uncomfortable being in my own bedroom.
Yeah,
I just had to leave.
With a lot of these episodes, I mean, so they went back into a lot of these great horror authors, and I'm talking authors from way, way back.
Edgar Allan Poe had a story in there.
Exactly. It was like Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, Clive Barker, Ambrose Bierce, like some of these major people who set up the horror genre, just period, not just in film, but just period in literature. And they pulled from a lot of these authors and, inspired episodes with it. Directors, talking about episodes directed by John Carpenter, Tobe Hooper,
I think John Landis.
John Landis
was in there. John Landis and Dario Argento.
Dario Argento did. Yeah. I mean, just basically a who's who of horror. And it was awesome.
Yeah. I have to recommend anybody who's one of my favorite series. It made me so sad it only lasted for 2 seasons, but maybe it was a good thing, because something like this, of this nature, when you take the who's who of horror fiction and then you take the who's who of horror films as far as directors go, and you put them together to basically create these 1 hour or like a little over an hour episodes. It's like, we're going to take this horror story, and then we're going to take fucking John Carpenter, and he's going to direct this thing and have just unmitigated creative control to do whatever they want.
Free reign.
And just free reign to churn out some of the most visceral and entertaining horror. You've seen like several episodes have made me uncomfortable watching this, because it takes advantage. These stories took advantage of every aspect of horror you can imagine, and you feel every inch of the director's vision within it. This wasn't like, it was like, where you watch The Thing and you know that there was studio interference and you know that that there's budgetary numbers behind this. It's like, no, this was Showtime, and it was a paid cable channel, and they've got Showtime money. They're not HBO, of course, but they've got Showtime money, and they're basically like, here's your budget, and it's big, go for it. Go for broke. And then all the things I've read, that these directors were completely and totally untethered, that they could walk in and do exactly what they want to do from a creative standpoint. And that just made for some brilliant stuff. Some key episodes that I think anybody who wants to jump into this, and you can find it on VOD, you can find it on Amazon Prime, you can find it on Microsoft Live, anywhere you can find your stuff. But some key episodes, and these are going to be in order, because there are 3 out of season 1 and 1 out of season 2 that I recommend. The first one is the Jennifer, and Jennifer was one that made me feel really weird. It was a very creepy, very gory psychosexual film, directed by Dario Argento, master of horror. There, I'm not trying to riff on that, but an absolute legend in horror film. It starred Steven Weber. And basically it was about the ultimate Butterface, but in a horror way.
Oh.
And this guy comes along and finds another guy trying to kill this girl in the woods. Okay, like he just happens along and finds this guy. He's like, oh my God, this guy's trying to kill this girl. And he intervenes and saves her. And this girl turns out to be we're talking like the horror Butterface of horror Butterface. And she's a monster. But she like draws men in and they become attracted to her. And so this monstrous female draws in this guy who saved her, and he becomes slowly more and more attracted to her, and it just starts falling in love with her, and it just devastates his life, and just it goes down the rabbit hole, and it is really freaking twisted. You don't see it coming, and the effects in that were just disturbing. to say the least. But that was a good one. You mentioned one early, another one, my second favorite, Cigarette Burns.
Yeah.
And Cigarette Burns was directed by John Carpenter. And that starred, we talked about him earlier, that starred Udo Kier. We've mentioned him previously on the podcast. And Norman Reedus was in that. And that one was about this film collector. This collector of rare films is searching for this supposed movie. This movie, shot by this director, this legendary director, that apparently when you watch it, it drives people mad. And he hires Norman Reedus, his character specializes in finding extremely rare shit and tracking down rare stuff. And he goes and tries to find this movie, and then the craziness that ensues from that one. And that one, I agree with you, Alex, that one was also very, very disturbing, because that was some apocalyptic John Carpenter shit like only he can do.
It just makes you so psychologically uncomfortable.
Yes, that was a disturbing one. And of course, and Udo Kier as the eccentric film collector, as only he could play. I thought he was great in that. Norman Reedus, always the understated actor. He's fantastic. The next one, the third one I recommend, is called Sick Girl, which is directed by Lucky McKee. Mm-hmm. And the mind behind The Woman and All Cheerleaders Must Die. And this starred Angela Bettis, who is a favorite actress of Lucky McKee. She's worked with him on the vast majority of his work. Angela Bettis, and I love to say her name, Misty Monday. Her name is actually Erin Brown, but her screen name is Misty Monday. And this girl
is in so many pornographies.
She is she doesn't do porn. She does
her name states otherwise.
Yeah. She does B schlock horror. So she does that sexploitation horror. And she has over 50 films to her name, but they're all low budget, they're all horror, and they're all like silk stockings stuff. Like topless stuff like this. She's just
and three of them are her shooting ping pong balls out of places we don't talk about on this podcast.
And Sick Girl was a twisted one because Lucky McKee always does weird stuff. It's weird. He's a big fan of female empowerment, but he's always putting his women in really horrible situations. So it's crazy. If you ever seen The Woman, very, very difficult film to watch. Very hard film to watch, but I recommend it if you really want to get a taste for Lucky McKee's work. But basically, Angela Bettis and Misty Monday play. They're both lesbians, and Angela Bettis plays the kind of the shy entomologist lesbian. So she's a lesbian who really likes bugs, and she gets this new species of bug, which turns out, and she gets this new species of bug in her lab, and then she meets this girl who moved into her apartment complex, played by Misty Monday, and they start kind of having this little, relationship. So we get a little bit of the sapphic enjoyment there, and then this bug, which turns out to be really sexually aggressive, gets involved, and I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Buzz,
one.
There's certain things you can't unsee.
It's one of those things you cannot unsee. It's really, really weird. And the last one I'm going to recommend, this was made before the Me Too movement, but it's called The Screwfly Solution. And it was directed by Joe Dante, one of my favorite ones, the guy behind Knights of Badassdom, many other films, but and starred, for love of God, had Jason Priestley and Elliot Gould in it. But this was a pretty violent film, and basically the premise of the film is that an alien virus basically descends on the Earth and drives all the men to violently attack all the women.
Damn.
Yeah, and so this is
Russia.
It's a brutal film, really violent, but really good acting. And it kind of thought-provoking in some respects, but definitely, I don't think any SJWs should be watching that movie. That one's pretty tough to watch as far as from a feminist standpoint. But I recommend those four: Jennifer, Cigarette Burns, Sick Girl, and The Screwfly Solution to really get a taste. Some fantastic directors to jump into, and you can really see what it's like to see these guys untethered from studio control. Just let them rip and just see what they can do.
Yeah, that was a big thing. The creator of the show kind of just gave, here you go, here's a camera, here's some, here's a chair, go for it.
Which is actually rare in a lot of situations. I don't think a lot of people understand how often the studio gets involved with movies. That's why, like, with a lot of like the Marvel superhero movies, they'll get these no-name directors because they're just happy to be directing something, looking for a big paycheck, and the studio can tell them to do exactly what they want.
Right.
So it's rare to really get like a good director, and they're like, "Here's money, do what you got to do. We know it's going to be awesome."
Yeah, so that was a good series. The second season wasn't perceived very well. It wasn't taken very well. Probably because a lot of the controversial stuff and people were uncomfortable watching it. So they ended up changing the name of the show, which I didn't know was the same situation. It makes sense now thinking back on it, but there was a third season called Fear Itself. They changed the name of the show. And so I know you can catch 1 and 2 for sure on Prime and PlayStation and stuff like that. But I don't even know where to find Fear Itself. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube.
Yeah, trying to look for it. Well, we got another big one coming up, right? A big one. This one actually started its own genre, even though it really doesn't kind of represent the tropes of the genre. And out of all the horror franchises, one of the biggest, but one of also the most recent that come about. And it came out October 29th, 2004. We're talking about the first Saw movie. Yes. Yes. I love this film. It's directed by James Wan, and this is actually his directorial debut. So like he came out of the gate running, and I think the most recent thing he directed was Aquaman. So, definitely him on the rise. It stars Carrie Elves, who everybody loves from Princess Bride, Danny Glover from the Lethal Weapon series, and Monica Potter and Michael Emerson. And this movie is incredible. A lot of the more recent Saw movies kind of went more towards like the kind of straight gore and the torture aspects of it. But when the actual first Saw came out, the original cut of this movie was only PG-13. And they had to actually go back in and reshoot a couple of like some basic gore scenes just to get it rated R kind of thing. So just talk about where the franchise begins. And this is where we get our, iconic villain Jigsaw, the puppet on the tricycle where he rides out. And basically the premise of it is you have a killer who I will not spoil where the killer is or what he's doing throughout the entire film, but you have this killer, and basically what he does is he takes people who basically take their life for granted and then put them in situations where you have to do something horrible to survive. Whether you have to cut your own foot off, you have to stab inside of a stomach, you talk too much, you talk bad about people, someone put a contraption on your head that will make you have to get this thing off, or you're just going to leave your mouth open permanently. If you're going to stab people in the back, now you got to stab somebody in the front, kind of thing. And so it has that really interesting theme of don't take advantage of life, kind of thing. It has an excellent twist at the end, which I will not spoil, but it's one of the best twists I've seen in a long time, on par with The Sixth Sense. And it actually started a whole genre, which a lot of people like to call torture porn kind of thing, even though it's not pornographic.
Which actually sounds, a lot cooler than it comes out to be. because torture porn, while it sounds fun, is actually they're talking more about like just the mutilation of the human body, which was really put out there into like a mainstream view with this movie. And then another big one was Hostel that came out not too long after it, and these Saw really started it out, and then it blew up. And that time Previously to this, stuff like home invasion movies was a big thing. You saw a lot of those, and we go into this big torture porn genre that becomes this commercially like accepted thing that really just plays on like an existential part of people. For some reason people are fascinated by it and repulsed by it at the same time, and they could not get enough of it, which made movies like Saw, like Hostel, some of the biggest films ever to hit movie screens, which is disturbing and twisted, and it makes me really question the human race.
And I was sitting here thinking, it's like, torture porn. What's this?
Yeah.
Oh, this isn't sexy at all.
I'm not even kidding. Okay, so Saw came out.
This is not what I wanted.
Well, yeah, but you're gonna watch it all anyways because it's like almost better. But that came out 2004, dude. I was 14 when this movie came out, and I saw it in theaters. And so this 14-year-old me, I saw that movie and I was jaded to, like, if you go on the internet and see an execution or a murder, like, I was jaded to that kind of stuff because of movies like this. Like, I'd seen the worst of the worst already, so you see it in real life and it was like, whatever. It's just like, whoa.
Yeah, because it always kind of makes you wonder, like, what sick person came up with some of these things? Like,
dude, a regular that's the thing. Somebody that you would meet, somebody that you would come across in the film industry, and they get to take out, instead of murdering real people, they get to do it for money, fake, over and over and over again, and it's friggin' twisted.
Well, I think it definitely, like you mentioned, it plays on the psychology of humans in that, in our deepest, darkest desires, you could say even like 100,000 years ago, human beings, if you transgress somebody, you had full right to take whatever vengeance you wanted on him, and that kind of ingrained sense of justice, going back to early man, to Homo neanderthal and Homo floresiensis, with that kind of stuff. It's just ingrained in us, in our genetics. And this kind of harkens back to a more primitive time when we could see the people that transgressed against us and we could visit upon them justice that we saw equal in our eyes. And it so readily puts the viewer, and because each entry of the franchise, you basically centers upon one person moving, going through whatever the killer has put in front of them as far as traps go or tests, and it's very easy to put yourself in that person's shoes because what got them into the situation was always very relatable. You could relate to that, you could relate to their feelings, and it's all very, very basic. And that's why the series became kind of cookie cutter. There are 8 entries into this franchise, and whereas the first film, where Saw, based off of the little 15-minute short film, which is what got them the option from Lionsgate, and then you have the first Saw, which actually brought up some serious questions, both existential and really serious societal questions about some things. But then as the series went along, I believe they began, Lionsgate and the directors began to capitalize on what the audiences found the most, which was the violence. Because it's so easy to relate to violence. Because human beings, we are a violent culture. We're a violent species. I mean, it goes back to when, Homo neanderthal, when Neanderthal man was walking around, 50,000 years ago. And then, all of a sudden, Homo sapiens, we come out of Africa, and then within 5,000 years of meeting us, Homo neanderthal is wiped out.
Yeah.
So it goes back to our origins in the fact that we're a violent species. So I think the directors and the production companies obviously capitalize to say, wow, we've set the tone. We can put out a movie every year or every other year, and it'll be in October, because that's when the first Saw came out, and then and that's when the whole marketing play, it's October, so it must be Saw. And then you hear that same intro to dun 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 dun, that whole thing, and so it's going to be a violent film, and you're drawn to see the violence and how intricate the violence can be, and how interesting the violence could be, and that sets a wave much like the meta horror wave, where people tried to be meta, caught being Scream, and then Saw kicks off the torture porn wave. Well, what capitalized? What worked best? The violence of the film, the intricacy of the trap. And then as each one goes on, that's all you got. You got cookie cutter characters being put through the most intricate meat grinders you could possibly imagine, and to the point where, and then in more and more morally ambiguous situations, because people just wanted the violence. And it kicks off the torture porn genre. Then you've got movies like Hostel, which I think, knowing Eli Roth, was probably more tongue-in-cheek for him as a director, but he was just kind of cashing in. But that's why Hostel was a little bit more tongue-in-cheek than Saw was. I think Saw always took itself way too seriously.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have Hostel coming out, and that got 3 entries. Then you had that movie Terestas, which is about, the black market organ trade, so like this. And then it just keeps going on. And then it starts to kind of permeate other genres where it's going to be gory, but it's got to be gory and unique. It's got to be interesting. It's got to be catchy. It's like, it can't just be bad guy stabs, protagonist, or bad guy did, it can't be the Michael Myers or Jason, Michael Myers, where it's just stab. It's got to be more Jason. It's got to be more Freddy, where it's intricate, it's interesting, it's eye-catching. It makes you go, oh, wow, I'm going to remember that. And eventually, you've got nowhere to go. Just like with rock music, it started with the Beatles, and it shocked people saw their haircuts, and it shocked them, and then it moves on to like the Rolling Stones, and then it moves on. Oh, sorry, the Beatles, then Elvis, and then the Rolling Stones, and then
Springsteen came in.
Bruce Springsteen, Aerosmith, and Kiss. And now we've got, and then Marilyn Manson, Slipknot, Rob Zombie, Gwar, okay, and it just keeps, and then in this moment, okay, and it just keeps going further and further, and eventually the shock value just starts wearing out. So the whole franchise becomes like an Ouroboros, where it's just a snake eating its own tail, where it really can't go any further. And shockingly, in spite of this, we're getting another Saw movie next year.
I know.
I know.
How are you gonna? Essentially they're just taking snuff films and trying to make them creative at this point.
Yeah, just like create, and 8mm wasn't even that good. Apparently, I'm the only one who saw that movie.
Oh no! No! I remember. It took me a while to think about it with Nicolas Cage, but
you cut out what movie?
8mm. Nicolas Cage watches porn.
Yeah, okay,
Phoenix.
It was basically Nicolas Cage watches porn and feels weird about it.
I don't know if I like this.
I'm feeling weird in my pants.
Whoa! This is
I'm at half-mast and I feel guilty.
Well, but see, then you get to the point where it's like, how far is too far? Because you start getting some of these other films, like a Siberian film, which is probably one of the most extreme films of the torture porn genre, which I don't know if any of y'all have ever heard or seen that one.
Like, I've definitely heard of it. That's
are you talking about 100? Are you talking about 120 Days of Sodom?
No, it's just called a Siberian film.
No, it's called Siberian. Yeah, it's on par with. I don't know if you've ever heard of the guinea pig films. Eugene, go ahead. Talk about Siberian.
I'm sorry. I'm just correcting. It's a Serbian film.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Serbian film.
Yes, Serbian film. Yeah.
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 But that is. I mean, that'll show you stuff you'll never forget.
Is that? Describe that one, because I feel like I've seen it.
So what it does is it's about a guy who's trying to get out of the porn industry, and so to kind of go and live a normal life with his family, so he decides to take one more job for basically the money to set up his family. And basically they turn him into like a sleeper killer on set. And so he'll have him doing something, like he'll sit there and he'll start like doing this girl and everything, and all of a sudden, the trigger will go off and he'll pull out a machete and like decapitate her. And then continue to have like sex with her and stuff like that. kind of thing.
That was a messed up. That was a messed up movie.
Yeah, that was that, and that's like one of the more tame scenes. It goes, I won't go, too deep into it, but that's the extreme of it.
And then they take that and they got to make it ready for, we'll say normal. It's quote unquote very loose word, but normal audience that they can put into a movie theater. And so, like, I guess they did a great job. And since we're talking about that specific Saw movie, they did a great job in this movie. Like you said, awesome twist at the end. You see and you're like, damn.
Yeah, I did not expect that. That kind of blew me away the first time. I was like, no shit. I mean, I was like, whoa. Of course, Cary Elwes in that performance, I was like, when it gets down to the climax, I'm like, no fucking way, he's gonna do it. And then all of a sudden, the twist, and I was like, oh my god. No spoilers. We're not spoiling for anybody. I mean, it's been out for 15 years.
It's been out for 15 freaking years.
But there may be some people out there who have not seen the first Saw film. But if you do,
I haven't seen anything past 3, I think.
Get ready to have your mind blown. You don't need to see anything past 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all the same.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about those.
3 was a good closure.
Yeah, they should have just quit right there. You can stop into the trilogy, boom, wraps of everything you need to know, and then you can end it right there.
Done.
It's all 1, 2, 3.
You know what? If you've got some time this week, it is a great. If you're gonna run like a horror movie marathon on Halloween, it's a good one to start with.
But if you get a chance, any of our listeners, if you love the Saw franchise, if you absolutely love it, let us know in the comments. Let us know, what was your favorite entry into the franchise? Did you like 2? Did you like 3? Did you just like the first one? Did you like this newest one that just came out? I believe last year in 2018, Jigsaw. Which ones did you dig? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, also, what was your favorite trap?
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, what was your favorite trap? Oh, yeah.
What was your favorite trap? The reverse bear trap, or the bathroom trap, or whatever. Any others in the entire franchise? Maybe the car that they strapped Chester Pennington to. Let us know what your favorite trap is.
I think the worst one, my 2. I'll go real quick. My 2, the shotgun in the key that was on the string that was tied to the shotgun. I think that was in 2.
That was in 3.
Oh, was that 3? Yeah. Yeah, that was rough. And then so from the first Saw movie though, I believe it was in the first one, was the pit of like heroin needles.
Oh,
that's the second one.
Was that 2? Man,
yeah, that was it too.
Whatever, that one was
of needles. That
I'm not super. Needles don't bother me. It was just, I don't know, the whole thing. That one made me super uncomfortable.
I was really disturbed by the ice block one, the ice block trap.
That
was pretty rough. Oh no, it was there was the one that the chick was in the freezer behind the handcuffed to the pipes. She was and it was like deep cold. It was something like 20 degrees, or maybe it was like 30, 40 degrees below zero. And she's butt naked, and in this freezer, and he's got to free her. He's got to uncuff her, but she's slowly being sprayed with water.
Yeah, with water.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Freeze. Oh my god.
That was a brutal way to go. That was
man.
But
I got to throw one in real quick. The Iron Bull, or was it the Iron Bull?
Oh shit! Out of 7, that was the one in the 7th one. Yes.
Oh god, they actually used that.
Yeah, that's some medieval shit right there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's like digging back through history and like what's some bad ways to die from ancient Greece.
Gross.
Oh, interesting. Anyway. So this next one is really, really slick. We're going to get to something really, really classic here. Pivotal moment. And even though most would not say it's horror, the effect it had would definitely be horror. In respect, this was October 30th, 1938. Big moment. And we're talking about the War of the Worlds 1938 radio drama. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, and I want to bring this as a big inspiration, for those who may not be aware, or those who haven't heard of it. So, The War of the Worlds was written by H.G. Wells, science fiction book written by H.G. Wells about invaders from Mars. And the book was written in 1898. And so, 1938, talking 40 years later, the Mercury Theater on the Air, which was an American radio drama anthology series, decided to do an adaptation of The War of the Worlds. They just updated it to the year to 1938, and it was broadcast on October 30th. It's supposed to be a Halloween special. And so they did this radio anthology, and directed by Orson Welles. Then relatively unknown Orson Welles, because he was an actor, but he hadn't really become the filmmaker he was. But it was directed and starring Orson Welles, Frank Readick, Kenny Delmar, and Ray Collins, and Dan Seymour was the announcer in that. And so this fantastical collection of talent got together and just did this radio broadcast adaptation. Now, this is 1938. We are literally, what is that? Just entering World War II.
Yeah, it was not quite yet. World War II starts in less than a year.
Yeah. And so, so this cast got together and decided to do this kind of special thing. And if anybody doesn't know, is not familiar with War of the Worlds, it's really simple, is that life is going on as normal, and then all of a sudden there are some astronomers witness some explosions on Mars, and then all of a sudden there are explosions in New York City, and then giant pods, these Martian pods, start attacking everything and start tearing up the city, tearing up the planet. And the story is about the conflict between us and the Martians. And that's pretty much it. But what happened is, in this radio broadcast, is there was an unintended effect because of the way the broadcast was presented. It was presented as broadcast media. And because there were no commercial or advertisement interruptions in the show, it was presented like Orson Welles got on there and he said that it was basically like they were just reading the news. And like things were going on, and then they would interrupt with breaking news. Local astronomers have seen explosions on Mars. They're unsure of where it's coming from, but more information as we get it, we'll stay on top of this story. And now on with this. And it would continue on like it was a radio broadcast. And there were a lot of people in the nation that got sucked into this, because a lot of people didn't start listening at the start, but word spread of mouth. Word spread via mouth, and people started tuning in after the start, because at the very beginning of the broadcast, Orson Welles specifically states that they are presenting an adaptation of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. But a lot of people missed that. And so they tuned in after the fact, and all they thought they were hearing was media broadcasts that Martians had come from Mars, were attacking New York City, and were spreading poisonous gas, killing everyone, and people started freaking out like this was actually happening.
Yeah, because you got to remember, this is before the internet, before cell phones. So it wasn't like something like, oh, well, let me look online real quick. Let me check a bunch of news sources or stuff like that. It was, you listen to the radio for your news. That was the television. Most people didn't even have televisions at that time and didn't really have access to television. So that was it. That was the radio. That was all you got, and people bought into it. And, you got to think at the time, sci-fi is starting to come up. You're starting to get some like Bucky Rogers stuff in the movie theaters and stuff like that. Technology is moving fast. We're experimenting with airplanes and rockets, and so you got that sci-fi element. And then the fact that most people, that was what your news in, it's easy to get caught into it. Like it was easy to buy into it, and people started arming up, and you're telling your neighbors you're getting ready for the Martian invasion, and it swept the country.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Come in 1938 after World War I, while there's obvious tensions, people are on their toes anyways, and like horror. Just to put it into perspective, horror movies had just come out. The first ever horror movie, I guess technically they call it the first ever, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari came out in 1920. And it was like, It was a commentary on an authoritarian presence in a post-war world, and then you get afterwards, you get from this, you get so many different things. So they come in, they give you this broadcast, everybody freaks out, and whether or not they know it later on, they find out that it's fake. Everybody is still kind of like, wait, but what if this actually happened? And so I feel like this whole thing sparked this paranoia of always just being on your toes because you think somebody's gonna invade. I mean, to be fair, not long after this came out, we were invaded by aliens. Just while we were somewhere else, there was all these invasions going on all the time, and now they're like, well, what if somebody came from outside of the world? Yeah, we're ready for a war. We've got our guns, but what if this UFO comes down and drops these aliens on us that we absolutely cannot fight, and we're all screwed? Like, do we come together? Do we fight each other? Are we looting? And it put everybody just on their toes. And then that just kind of carried on. And then with World War II, it just kept the paranoia rolling. And, even it's stuff like, I hate to bring up a dark time, but 9/11, like, you get attacked, you don't see it coming, everybody wants to be prepared, but in all reality, it just causes this mass hysteria, and it's gonna, like, we're gonna hurt ourselves.
It really does, because as a human race, we're scared about things that we cannot control.
So we overcompensate on the things we can, and that's how you end up with, a cache of guns in one person's house. And
yeah, exactly. So, we things, and, absolute control is defined by, the ability to destroy it. And when you read the book War of the Worlds, it defeats the military. The military lose, and it's something completely else that goes and defeats the aliens. But it's like, out of all the technology that we have and all the stuff that all the advancement we made, if an alien race ever came here, they would beat us because, first of all, they were able to get here, which means
that's exactly what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
If they can make it here from another planet, they've already beat us.
Yeah.
That'd be terrifying. Could you imagine that? You're just minding your own business. I was driving my girlfriend to the airport at like 3:30 in the morning the other day, and we're right in the middle of a meteor shower that we go through, I think, twice a year, going through Halley's Comet's dust trail. And so, like, we saw a huge shooting star drop from the sky, and it made me think of this movie immediately because... Or not movie, I mean the broadcast, but even the movie, because in the movie it's like, shooting stars pretty much until they hit the ground and it's like we're screwed. But it just, what would happen if you're minding your own business and aliens fell from the sky? What would you do? It's not something you think about, but honestly, I mean, the statistics, the odds, like, it could happen. It definitely could happen.
It's like an Independence Day. It's like... police officials are asking Los Angelinos, do not fire your weapon at the alien spaceships. Right.
What would you do?
You could risk an interstellar war.
That's an honest question, though. Like, what?
But there are a lot of analogs today. We can see those even today, even with the advent of the internet, even with the advent of a phone and the world information, the information of the world literally in our pocket at all times. I'm driving home from work and I'm seeing people, if people are stopped or people are driving below 10 miles per hour, they have their phone in their hand.
Oh, yeah.
And we're almost a cybernetic society. But given the range of our knowledge, the range of our communication, everything at your fingertips, and we still see those little things that could trigger this kind of hysteria. We see in this world of fake news and who's on the other end of the computer, the anonymity of the internet. You never know, what groups are working against you. The effects of on our election. How much hysteria has been built today off of some ads that ran. And they were curtailed, or they were designed to look as official as possible. Go ahead.
And see, talking about on, like, could it happen today? I remember this happened probably maybe about 2 years ago in Dallas and a lot of other parts of the country when we had the surprise gas shortage.
Oh, that was enormous, and it was like
Yes.
in less than 24 hours that exploded.
And so the thing is like there was never ever a gas shortage, but because people panicked and they ran to the gas stations to fill up, it actually created a gas shortage because
Yeah,
the
so
supply just wasn't expecting that many people to go get gas. And you're talking about hours and gas stations, racetracks, and QTs were like empty
Yeah,
Jared and
completely.
I worked for Quick Trip at the
we
time.
did. Yeah.
And so I was working a shift where I had to do a couple overnights a week, and I rolled into a store that had no gas. And so we shut down the store, and the next manager left, and I'm on my own. It's a slow store. I'm on my own for from Jared, what was the RA shift? It was like 11 to 7.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm on my own from 11 to 7. The manager from the previous shift leaves, and not even 5 minutes later, a gas truck rolls into the parking lot, followed by, I'm not even shitting you, 60 cars. And these people like literally came in, and from 11:15 to 7 in the morning, I was just on a constant, it was a barrage because it takes them a little while to dump the gas. People were coming in and throwing money at me and yelling at me, telling me, why aren't the pumps working? The gas truck's here. Like, dude, he hasn't even put the hose in the ground yet. And like you said,
Your shit.
it was so bad.
Like
It was no shit.
the gas just
was
transfers via osmosis.
The cops literally they came and pulled this dude out of his truck on the side of the road because he had come in with 355-gallon barrels and filled them with gasoline and left, and the cops saw him pulling out and stopped him, and he was like trying to like resist arrest because you can't just put gasoline in freaking 55-gallon barrels. Plastic barrels. It was insane. And like you said, there was no gas shortage. But
No,
because
it was
everybody said there was, everybody ran and got all of the gas, filled up their car, their reserve car, all their gas tanks, 55-gallon drums, and took all the gas away. And it screwed everybody.
I worked because I was working day shifts at that time, and I remember we had employees out there, and they should have been refilling my damn grills and everything, but they were out there in the friggin' parking lot, or out there at the parking lot in the pumps directing traffic, trying to ease congestion because we had people coming in. We had to because the QT is designed where cars come in and every we have lots of entrances and exits, but we actually had to flow traffic through the whole place because we just had cars coming in at all angles trying to just get in. We had accidents all over the place, and that
Highways
whole thing
backed up, accidents.
yeah, and that whole thing started because there was a news report that there could be shortages, basically saying that there could be shortages coming. That there might be.
The whole thing happened.
It was all suppositional. It was just like, hey, wow, this could happen. This could happen. Ooh, but it was done in such a way that that the media at the time was really playing on the fear. It was like, the clickbait. It was like living clickbait. Guess what could happen? There could be no gas.
There was a hurricane down in Houston, and some of the oil refineries ended up getting started on fire. And so they showed this on the news, and nobody did any research to see that there's a whole shitload of other oil refineries around us.
Yeah.
That wasn't an issue. Everybody else was up and running except for these few that got shut down. And so without doing any research, people panicked. And that's I think it was last year. A ton of people across the United States got a emergency message on their phone stating that there was a ballistic missile inbound.
Oh,
it was gonna
I
Hawaii.
remember that in Hawaii. Yeah.
And so that set off just that was so traumatizing to people that they just released a season. Wow. Released a season of American Horror Story based on that text message. It was the same thing. It was like an emergency message went out and there was missiles in, and they even referenced the Hawaii, oh yeah, remember that one from the Hawaii, but it was like a real one this time, and it showed what would happen if every major city got hit with nuclear war. And but just the fact that all it takes is one person to fuck up and send the wrong message out to send an entire country into panic. Like,
but the fact that this is
terrifying.
2019, okay? Here we are, 2019. The World broadcast was 1938. Okay, so what are we looking at? Like almost 80 years? 81 years?
Something like that, yeah.
So we're looking at like 80 plus years since this broadcast, 2019, the advent of our technology, and we still see it happening today. So there is something intrinsic in the human condition that allows for, despite our technology, regardless of how advanced we've become, the right amount of fear in the right place can just trigger a wave. And then we're back to hiding in bunkers, wondering if the sky is falling, like it's, like we just heard about the nuclear bomb going off, or like there could be, or the Spanish flu is coming through, it's the Black Plague or something of that nature, or the Ebola outbreak, when in actuality it was literally that Ebola outbreak in Reston, Virginia that took place back in the 90s, and it really wasn't even really an outbreak. It wasn't extreme, but that set off a hotbed of craziness. And then because once you hear disease outbreak CDC, all it took were those 3 words, and almost the entire East Coast was just in a frenzy because it was Ebola. When in actuality, it was Ebola, but it was the version that affects monkeys, not affecting humans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, but then we all got hit with actual Ebola, actually right here in Dallas.
Stuff like that. So it takes a little bit. So my question for our audience, my question for any of you listeners, in today's atmosphere of social media and media integration into our lives, as we get beyond this, could it happen again? Do you think it could happen again? What do you think could trigger some mass event? With the hotbed of activity in North Korea, with trade relations with China, with the difficulties in the Middle East right now, with Syria ramping up, and the issues with Russia, and all this craziness that's going on. Do you think it could happen again, and what do you think would happen to trigger something like that? I'd like to hear. Put your answers, put your suggestions or your answers in the comments.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right, if you want to move on to one that actually kind of relates, if you want to look at it from this point of view, November 1st, 2002, released in the UK first before it was released in the US, was 28 days later. You want to talk about activists and people causing problems. You got these PETA-type animal activists go into a laboratory and...
tree-hugging hippies.
Damn hippies. They go
causing the apocalypse.
Mind your own damn business. So they were doing experiments on some
that is new definition. That is new definition to stay in your fucking lane.
Yeah, exactly. PETA's out here causing fucking problems again. Hey, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm totally against animal experimentation and all that, but some people just take it one step too far by sticking their nose where it shouldn't go, and then release chimpanzees that are being experimented on with a virus that just causes rage and is
and then it destroyed the human race.
And then it's super highly contagious. They get out, infect everybody in the freaking world, and then you get left behind with 4 stupidest freaking people in the world. But no, I'm sorry. You have to go into a coma first and then wake up from a coma, because that's just the way zombie movies work. But, so 28 days later...
Will you take the hospital key?
Yeah, exactly. Wait a second.
I remember saying that.
How am I the only one left in the hospital?
Well, I remember saying that because it was like playing Resident Evil. He wakes up in the coma, and he's like, oh, what's going on? What's happening? He gets out of the bed, and he looks around. And he's like, the door is locked. He looks down, and it showed the key on the ground at his feet. Now, and I literally had to lean over to my friend. Will you take the hospital key? Yes.
No. Should have just sat there. Yes.
That was one of Danny Boyle's best. And I think that one put him on the market. I mean, Trainspotting was fantastic, but I think that made him an indie director that made him like a fave indie director. But 28 Days Later, I think, was a breakout film for him. It really was.
Yeah, because his approach to it was awesome. It was a nice, fresh twist in a genre that's already been around for a while. And so, like, one of the things he actually did and is known for is shutting down London. Like, he had access to these places like, Big Ben and over the river. I think it's a river Thames that runs through, and all those bridges and all this other kind of stuff. And he was able to get shots of these places barren and empty, and this isn't like a $200 million, like Disney movie or anything like that. This is, kind of a modest budget that they were able to do it in. And so they're actually able to capture a lot of it they would shoot a lot of it on Sunday mornings, and they would shut small sections down, and they were able to shut it down for about 45 minutes. So, like, Sunday morning, you get the least amount of traffic in some of those areas. And they actually were one of the first films to use a digital camera because, digital camera's been around for about 20 years. At that point, it just hasn't caught up to film-like technology, especially, you're talking about in 2002. So they shot it. But because they had such a short window to shoot in, it wasn't feasible to set up a big camera, load the film into it, and get it all calculated and up to speed and stuff. So they actually used a Canon XL1 digital camera, something that they can just put some memory cards in, put it on a tripod, and like one of the things, he walks by a double-decker bus that's turned over on its side. They literally turned it over, had him walk across it, and then put it back upright. So it's like you see these little moments of him walking by, and then everything else around that you don't see in frame, they're like, as he's side scrolling, everything behind the camera, like putting back up because, they can only shut it down for so long for it. But they actually used a couple of filters during that scene to really give it kind of this dream-like. It looks a little out of focus because it's just this hazy dream sequence because it's so real.
That was that really cool stuff, and I didn't know that they shot that on the XL1. When I first got into filmmaking, I started doing my own stuff. I shot on the XL2, and it literally is my favorite handheld camera. I fucking love that camera, I really do. And I had no idea he was shooting on the XL1. The XL1 and the XL2 were two really impressive cameras for the price, and I enjoyed working at this. That's really cool. That explains the kind of grain, and you can see a lot of influence from Train Spotting. A lot of the techniques he used in Train Spotting, he did in this. And I would agree that the dreamlike quality of certain aspects of the film, mixed in with the gritty reality, is really interesting. I think he did a lot of interesting work with his color palettes. The way he approached each one made them all really, really interesting.
Yeah, he actually, with the color palettes, he used a lot of blues and greens. Like even the scrubs that he's wearing when he's walking through, to kind of actually emphasize that kind of a little bit of a dream state. And it's almost like a kind of a return to nature, because eventually nature kind of takes over. So you start kind of like this blue, and then it ends when they're in their house on the valley at the very end with a lot of greens to it. So it's kind of like a return to nature, or almost like a return to form. Kind of like humans have messed up the earth, and now the earth is kind of fighting back. Not talking about The Happening. No. No.
The best movie ever.
What?
The same
what? What? No.
Oh my God, their breeze is coming.
But his 28 Days Later was so influential as far as what I like to call the zombie family tree, in that George Romero kicked it off. We have our slow shambling zombies, and that was pretty much the norm. That was the bar for zombies. The slow shamblers, like this, and then like they grab you, and but generally easy to defeat as long as they don't surround you. But 28 Days Later kicked off, and I think it allowed filmmakers to play with the zombie genre and not be rooted. Although paying respects where respect is due, George Romero, he kicked this bad boy off, and the Italian films that came along that were really gory and super gross, but they were always slow shambler zombies. And then you had the likes of Zack Snyder, who brought in the fast zombie. It's like, oh, zombies can be fast, but they're virtually the same, but they're just fast, which makes them scary as hell. But I think Boyle, in the respect of the zombie genre, paying homage to those who came before him, but opened up the door that zombies don't have to be just supernatural undead. Okay, that we can root these bad boys in reality. That there could be something that could trigger this, and the fact that it's a virus. These people, they act zombie. They attack people. They're not really eating people, but they brutally attack people. They just beat them to death. Okay, or they spread the virus, and then they eventually starve to death because they're not eating. And so,
well, you just ruined the second two movies.
Well, there's only one other film that's 28 weeks later.
Yeah.
But that takes it in a whole nother direction. But he rooted it in, I think that's the influence of it, is that he opened up the zombie genre to further interpretation. That there could be the Romero verse, and there can be anybody else who can play with that genre and do whatever they want with it. Now we have all kinds of interesting things. We have all kinds of one of my favorite. Without 28 Days Later, we wouldn't have had like Wormwood, Road of the Dead, which was one of my favorite Australian zombie films. Brilliant little movie.
That was an amazing movie.
That was an amazing fucking movie, wasn't it?
If you see, that was another one that seriously, it was so underrated. It was so hard to find even. Like, if you get a chance, go out and watch Wormwood.
It was like 2 weeks. It was on net, or maybe a month. It was on Netflix.
Yeah, it was on for like a minute, and it was gone.
And I saw it, and I was like, "What the hell is this? This dude in this armor, and it's Wormwood."
Dude, it's amazing.
The Australian movie. And I was like, "Oh, I gotta watch." That movie was fucking incredible. So underrated film, but without 28 Days Later, without Boyle breaking the mold and saying, "Hey, you can do zombies, but they don't have to be your traditional zombie." And I think he opened the door and said, yeah, we can do all kinds of things with this. They don't have to be, just like Alien or the unexplained awakening of the undead. We don't have to have that. We can continue on. We can go further. And we can do, kind of like what Resident Evil was doing in their video games, where it's not just zombies, but like mutations and stuff. Without 28 Days Later, we wouldn't have like The Last of Us.
It's hard it's hard to call them zombies, in my opinion, because it's like it's more of like an infected type. And I wouldn't even say it's like the infected type
they never call them zombie. Yeah, they never call them zombies. They call them the infected.
The infected, and so just because it goes from like that one scene where the drop of blood gets in the dude's, I think it's in his eye.
Yeah,
and it's in a matter of seconds that they change, so they're still alive. They haven't like slowly died off because of infection and then reanimated into a zombie. It's an immediate infection. It's highly contagious, and it plays on like how fast this is spread. I don't know. It'd be hard to call them zombies because that's not really what they are in the sense of the word. But like you said, they took it in a different direction, and you've got this whole thing now where. And in Wormwood, I'm not bashing on it, but you've got like this hybrid type infected zombie. Like, you got to pick one side or the other on these. And they just took that immediate infection. There's no saving it. There's nothing you can do. Once you're touched, you're done. And that's why it wiped out the entire world in 28 days.
There's no hacking off a limb. There's no hacking off a limb or doing anything to save this person. You've got 10 to 12 seconds to kill them before they become your worst nightmare.
That's a huge psychological part of it too, because like you don't get time to think. I was just thinking of the movie when you said hack off a limb, World War Z. No, is that?
Oh yeah.
World War Z.
The Mossad.
We had to cut that arm off.
We had to cut the girl's arm off. Yep.
And so like you had a couple of seconds to like think about it. At this point, it's like the love of your life, your parents, your child is infected. You've got 5 freaking seconds, or you're gonna die with them, and you're
or
done.
Become
so
one.
It's like, right. You have no freaking option. You got to act fast, and you got to act relentless, and you got to close yourself off to your life. That would be such a terrifying world to be a part of.
And what's
it played on that. You have a non-ending just like sense of dread, doom, because it's not like if, it's when.
Oh, it's like it's that scene in the film when Naomi Harris, and they get when Naomi Harris they're staying in Jim's house, and the two zombies crash it because Jim foolishly was using a candle and they were attracted to the light, and you got the one comes in through the skylight, one comes in through the window, and they're attacking him, and then there's a big melee going on, and then they kill them both. Both of them are killed, but the one guy that was with them is cut on the arm.
Yep.
And he's like, and you don't know, because if it's just a drop gets in you, you're done. And so he has not started turning yet, but you've only got 10 seconds, and she just makes the split decision: smoke, you're dead.
Just boom.
There's no way, you can't even risk it, and you're friggin' gone. And it's like, holy shit, you didn't even know if he was infected yet. You can't take the risk.
Yeah, because what's so scary about it is, unlike The Walking Dead, where it's like, okay, well, if you're like a good shot and you can be careful, you can pretty much live, indefinitely or anything like that. In the world of 28 Days Later, you could be so cautious, so careful, and you can learn how to survive in the woods, and it takes one mistake, where the blood dropped in his eye. That quick, that instant. That one little microsecond, you mess up and you're done.
10 seconds.
That's a serious analog. I think it's an analog for nature itself. Is like, you can be like, if you're out there surviving, doing whatever like that. I've got survival training. I've got wilderness training, and you could be going along. You could be as prepared as possible. You could have everything you need, all of your tools. You could have your plan, and then all of a sudden, one wrong step, where just that one thing is like, oh, I twisted my ankle. You are fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
we're on a rock flying through space.
Yeah, it brought a real world terror. It grounded it and and said, hey, by the way, remember, life is kind of like this. And that's the thing made it so related. He took like the zombie genre, and he made it relatable again. It's like it connected us to it, which I think made it so terrifying.
Absolutely.
That and the thought of like a hideous red-eyed monster, jumping and beating you in the face and then spraying 3 gallons of blood onto you. Yeah, that's pretty horrifying too.
I mean, that would suck for sure.
That would suck balls.
But only for about 10 seconds.
It's true, only for about 10 seconds. Then you really wouldn't care.
I would like to shout out to John Murphy, who did the soundtrack to 28 Days Later. The In a Heartbeat, the scene in the mansion at the very end, like,
oh yeah,
oh man, it was
that build.
Oh, it was like it had this build, and it was like action, but the song was like heartbreaking at the same time.
Oh god, thing. Yeah.
Oh,
it just broke to the moment. That was longer than a heartbeat. I was like, oh, I was like, God, because dude, I'm sorry, that one already, he went out fucking hard, and I was kind of like, he went out. I mean, the infected have a way because they're basically just beating your ass to death and like that. But that cat, he went out nasty, and before they killed him, for the sergeant was like, it's gonna end badly for you, and like that. It was like, fuck yeah, it ended badly for that dude, Jim. Holy shit.
God.
Oh,
so
man.
I just thought of something, because that movie was very existential, and it was super doom and gloom, and the feel of the whole movie was just, it was not if, it was when, and you could feel it the whole time. Now, even with the whole population being wiped out, the people that were left would not be able to repopulate the earth for sure. So think about this. What if something happened like that in real life? Let's just say, I mean, there's a ton of people, something could happen. Bioengineering is a huge thing right now. Biohacking, somebody's going to fuck up and cause the apocalypse. And then all of a sudden, all human life is gone. Nobody would ever fucking know. Even if there was other beings out in the universe, they happened across this planet, they'd be like, what the fuck happened here? And nobody would fucking know. Or we would just be gone, and there's nothing else out there, and the whole thing. Oh my god, that's hard to think about, man.
Yeah, actually, I watched a show. It was on the History Channel. It was what if all people disappeared or something like that? And it was
what would happen to the Earth?
what would happen to the Earth. And the scariest thing was they said within 300 million years there would be no trace of the human species. All cities would be
500
gone.
million years, our sun's going to start exploding, so...
It's like a few billion. But to all of our listeners, let us know, what is your favorite zombie? Do you prefer the Romero slow shambler zombie, or do you like the Zack Snyder fast zombie, or maybe you like rage infected zombies, or maybe you like zombies that you use for gas? So whatever zombies that you like, let us know in the comments. What's your favorite zombie? Eugene, what else we got? We got one more, don't we?
Oh yeah, we got one more, right? We'll end it off on another crazy note. So we got a nice juicy film coming up that was actually released November 2nd, 1990, right? It was directed by Adrian Lyne, and it stars Tim Robbins, and it's called Jacob's Ladder. And yeah.
Fuck, I remember that this movie's so twisted.
Did you see this one in theaters, Jared?
Okay, I was 10 when this thing came out, so no, I did not see it in theaters, but I did see it when it hit television, and I think I was probably like 14 or 15, maybe when it hit. I saw it on TV because, God, good Lord, that was a twisted movie.
So for those of you listening, Jacob's Ladder is about an army combat medic who he's fighting. He's with his unit and he's fighting in a battle in Vietnam, and he gets bayoneted, and then he awakens in New York City, and he starts having these hallucinations. It's 4 years later, and he can't remember anything within those 4 years. And he's trying to track down his family because he had a wife and kid before he left for Vietnam. Now he wakes up and he has this girlfriend. He's trying to track down his old army buddy. He's trying to track down a doctor at the VA hospital. And all these bizarre hallucinations and weird things start happening. You start seeing like these people with no eyes and their heads are shaking like violently, kind of thing, like a real creepy like effect to it. And he starts having dreams about his, and he starts going back and forth between like the life he should be having and the life that he has now, which shouldn't exist, kind of thing. And it has a real nice twist at the very end on what actually happens, kind of thing. But it does kind of start dealing with the fact that the U.S. government is experimenting on troops in Vietnam without them knowing about it.
Yeah, because that didn't happen. What are you talking about?
Yeah, of course not.
The government didn't fuck with our soldiers. Why would they do that?
They would never. This is an honorable society led by an honorable government.
Fake war. They didn't start this fake war just to experiment on what different things would do to troops.
Just to see what happened.
I remember
Nobody noticed.
This film. This is that Jacob's Ladder was so psychologically creepy and a lot of insane visuals. I remember that the film bounced. The director made the brilliant decision. It had there were many scenes that had a very ethereal, dreamlike quality, and he moved a lot between wide establishing shots. He spent a lot of time with wide establishing shots to kind of establish the world. To give us a sense of Tim Robbins' character's worldview, and then shot down to cowboys or close-ups, and just back and forth. There was a slow burn to the film as his character descends into the madness that is slowly encroaching all around him as he's trying to get to the bottom of what is going on and where his lost memories go. And the camera effects and the lighting that were done were all very, very subtle, and there was things tended to bleed into themselves. So shadows were not really, there was nothing very stark. It was very, very soft. And for surprisingly for a horror film, that left, to me, that kind of effect was very disconcerting. It added to the level of anxiety because this is a nightmare anybody could have. It made it very, it was like where you're looking at it through kind of like a filter, and there's something really horrifying behind that filter, but you can't really quite make it out. And it was a whole film of this character trying to come to terms with what is going on around him and the shit that he's seeing. And you mentioned the special effects in that. And what made that even scarier is when I found out that the twisted facial deformities and the deformed people that he was seeing were all based upon real life deformities. Like these are real ailments from treatments that people got that actually caused physical deformity. So these are all based in reality. So there were audience members that recognized this. It's like, this is realistic shit. And the effects personnel fought to get that in there to make it, to really ground it. And then the demonic imagery is all coming from the glimpses of demons. Nothing ever stands out directly. There's never like a monster, like, whoa, I'm a monster. No, it's always glimpses out of the corner of your eye. Did I really see that? And it plays upon that anxiety, that growing anxiety that you are not in control, that that there's something going on that you should know, that maybe you do know, but you're not certain, and the uncertainty of it. And Tim Robbins played that to remarkable effect. He's always been, for such an intimidating guy, because he's so tall. I think he's like 6'4", 6'5", and he can just tower in a scene, and he has this presence. But to play this kind of introverted, withdrawn character, shrugged at the shoulders, and just like the weight upon, you could see the weight on him. We saw it again in Shawshank Redemption. Mm-hmm. You know, he can be you put that guy in a suit, you give him good posture, he can be an imposing guy. Okay, he really can be. But to see that emotion and that the growing weight on him, brilliant choices across the board, a terrifying film, especially leading up to the end when you get to the climax and you see kind of the effects of where the story was inspired from.
Yeah, because the scene that got to me was when they were wheeling him through the hospital. And
God, when he's strapped to the gurney,
yeah, and he's like, I want to go home, and he's like, what are you talking about? You're dead, kind of thing. And the fact that like the lack of control that you have in that situation, you're strapped down, they're pulling out all these tools, and you can see the utter fear in his face. Like, that's a terrifying situation to be in.
Yeah.
Jared, your explanation of the way that movie was shot and the effects that if I were to turn on the podcast right when you started talking there, you could have compared that movie to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Which in itself was the scariest film I've ever seen.
Seriously, the way that you explained that, I was thinking about. I was trying not to laugh so hard because I was just thinking of that movie while you were explaining it, but then like thinking of it as a horror movie, and it was just it was working. It was definitely working. But no, you made a really good point there with the way that it made you feel, and the way that like they took all these special effects and really kind of fucked with your brain and kind of put it off to the side and really made you feel like you said it right when you said like there's something there and you feel like you should know about it but you can't. And then your brain just runs with it. And then at the end of that movie, when it all kind of like because this is definitely one you should check out. Also because they just came out with another one, which I'm sure sucks, but I'm going to watch it anyways. There's a remake done 2019, so I'll definitely check that out.
I've heard about that. Yeah, I don't think it'll top the original. I'm
sure it'll suck, but I'm going to watch both of them just because Halloween's going to be a movie day for me. But I mean, like in playing 1990, playing off of Vietnam War, and I said before a made-up war. I didn't mean like it was like a fake war, just the fact that it was kind of an unnecessary war. But a lot of things happened to the American people during that. A lot of bad things happened in Vietnam that were super unnecessary, and it sucks that a lot of people lost their lives in just a stupid war. But like you said, there was real experimentation going on, and real people that you can talk to now. There are a lot of people that were in the Vietnam War are around. They're old, but they're around, and you can talk to them. And not a lot of people like talking about it because, besides being war, there was a lot of bad things that the way the soldiers were treated. Like, here you go. Here's a jungle. Fucking survive. Well, why are we fighting? Well,
good luck.
Don't stop fighting. But, like, why are we fighting? Like, you're an American, go fight this war. And it was just that aspect alone messed them up. now you're in a jungle trying to survive. And there was this experimentation. There was a lot of LSD that they were like putting into food and water supplies to see how soldiers reacted. And it just, the whole aspect of the movie was so real to so many people at that point in time because it was so fresh. And it was
And that
really
term Jacob's Ladder. That's a religious reference, if I'm not.
It is a very it is a religious reference. I could not. I don't want to spew off some bad information regarding that because there is a lot of stories on what it actually means, and I'm gonna.
But I think it's referring to the transitional space between heaven and earth.
Yeah, but it has a lot to do with like. No, go ahead. If you got
it's like I remember reading somebody who's like where it's basically speaking of the transitional space between heaven and earth, where one is kind of working their shit out. That's a total lay perspective. I'm not a theologian or a theology person. I don't know, but if I remember correctly, I think it refers to that space between heaven and earth, and working out your life before being able to before moving on. That transitional period is what I think it's a reference to. Which given everything that he hallucinates in that film, is plays right into it, man. It is a wildly psychologically trippy film with some real world roots, inspired by some real world shit, and strongly I've always loved it. It's been one of my favorites for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely highly recommend it. It's something trippy. It's a good psychological movie. Does talk about some stuff with Vietnam and, what happened to our troops. And then let us know, in the comments or post on our page, what are some other government conspiracy horror films that you love? Because there are a couple more out there. And so, maybe we'll go and, post the ones that you like, and we'll go and, talk about it. Maybe we sit and watch it, something like that kind of thing. So,
yeah, if you have any recommendations, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we do have one birthday this week we talk about, and born on Halloween itself, right? October 31st, 1961, we have the legendary director Peter Jackson.
Oh, sweet.
Yes.
Happy birthday, Peter Jackson, Sir Peter Jackson.
And so, obviously he's well known for, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but he actually got his start in horror. One of his first films he directed is called Dead Alive, or is also called Brain Dead.
Oh fuck. Okay. I've been dreading talking about this movie for so long, ever since I wrote this fucking script, and. Yeah, just go ahead. Get on with it.
He's like, don't bring it up.
Okay. Obviously I'm a horror nut, and I've seen a lot of gnarly shit. I've seen some I've watched I sat through Chrome Skull 2, and girls getting their faces sliced off, and I've sat through The Thing and Prince of Darkness and all kinds of gnarly shit, and fucking Silent Hill, people getting their skin ripped off. I can deal with a lot of heinous shit, but fucking Peter Jackson's Dead Alive is the only film that has ever made me physically ill. He has the distinction to be the only director to make me want to puke in the middle of a scene. I almost fucking threw up, probably a little in my mouth, when this one particular scene popped up. And I don't want to spoil it for people because I want people to watch it and engage with it and see if they can make it through without getting sick. But yeah, whenever this movie gets brought up, and I get tormented with it by my friends, obviously you can see they're having fun at my expense. But Dead Alive was a fucked up one. It's a zombie movie. I'll just leave it at that. But he also did Bad Taste?
Yeah. So yeah, he also did he did Bad Taste. Let's see, Brain Dead. He also has, a couple other stuff. King Kong.
You forget Meet the Feebles.
Oh yes, that's the one I was looking for. Yeah, Meet the Feebles.
Yeah, Meet the Feebles, which was Sesame Street on fucking crack.
Yes.
That was Sesame Street in the throes of crack addiction. That was a seriously twisted fucking... Funny as shit. That movie was funny as fuck, but that was Sesame Street on crack. Like, crack, you got any more crack? We're talking Chappelle Show crack. Like, crack? Yeah?
Peanut butter and crack sandwich.
I'll tell you something you don't know about me, Joe Rogan. I smoke rocks. But that was a twisted fucking film. If you can imagine, Muppets on crack. It was crack. It really was. It was insane. And it's all puppets.
I'm getting the feeling that crack is involved somewhere here.
Yes, crack was involved. At one point, I believe, if I remember correctly, crack was involved.
A little bit of crack cocaine.
And they're Muppets. They're fucking Muppets. Well, they're not the Muppets that we know. They're not Jim Henson Muppets. But they are puppets. These are puppets and people in puppet costumes. This was Sesame Street, only it was Skid fucking Row. Skid Row Sesame Street. And you name a vice, it was in this. It was so fucking gnarly. There was sex, there is violence, there is drugs, there is necrophilia, there is STDs, it's above and fucking beyond.
You got really excited when we hit necrophilia there.
You're right.
Settle down, man.
That was an extra pep, really want to get that out
Peter
there.
Peter Jackson can direct a fucking horror movie. I'm glad that he's moved on. I'm glad that we got King Kong, we got The Frighteners, which is one of my favorite Peter Jackson movies.
Yep.
And of course Michael J. Fox, I love him to death. Of course, Lord of the Rings for all you preciouses out there. Don't want to forget you. And just, he's given us so much, but his early start, crazy fucking horror.
Oh, yeah. I want to know, how much blood they used in Dead Alive. How many gallons? All I'm going to say is there's an awesome scene with a lawnmower, and I'll just leave it at that.
Fuck. Okay, I just got to focus on the priest. I kick ass for the Lord. Fuck, that dude was awesome. That guy was fucking amazing. Okay, I don't want to spoil anything else, but that dude was fucking amazing. Holy shit! But yes, very cool. Happy birthday, Peter Jackson. Thank you so much for all the years.
Happy birthday, Peter.
All right, that wraps up another week in horror. Thank y'all so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoy making this. If you did, go ahead, go to facebook.com/weekinhorror, subscribe, turn on your notifications. We'll drop a new episode every Sunday. You can follow the Daily Splatter every day on Facebook. It's just a little bit of horror history for that day. We're constantly trying to improve what we're doing, so feedback, comments, questions, anything you've got, lay it on us. This is something we love doing, and we'd love to be better at it. So if you guys want to go ahead, give us all you got. I'm Alex.
I'm JL.
I'm Eugene.
And we will see you next week.